All right, fantastic. We have another episode today with Bob Sabidlo. Thank you so much for coming on, Bob, to talk about email marketing. Mate, tell me a little about yourself. What do you do? Where are you from? All the good details.
Yeah, so my name is Bob Spidler. As you said, I'm the Director of Technology Consulting for Inverted Digital. We are a full stack, end-to-end digital agency that focuses on MarTech, technology, process, deployment, development, everything. And we do a lot of strategic work. So not just the strategic work in like program strategy, but also technology strategy. Like how are you going to use the technology you have? How are you going to execute on these campaigns? What capabilities do you need? So do a lot of work in that regard. I've been doing this for like 16 years now, which is wild. I got into this through deliverability. That was my first job, like kind of out of school. I was a deliverability analyst before I even knew what deliverability was. We started a small shop that serviced a bunch of clients kind of in Canada and the States. And as I got deeper and deeper into that world, I realized that my scope needs to broaden. So we got into creative, we got into strategy, we got into data, all those things. And that just sort of exposed me to like consulting, technology consulting as a whole. So I could talk more about it, but I have like, severe imposter syndrome. And I think that's all I can get right now.
Yeah, 100%. Well, so you work at an agency where, and I was looking through your guys' client list a while back, where there's a particular focus on probably the larger clients, more enterprise clients that you guys are working with. And as I was saying before the meeting, would love to dive a little bit more into what strategy looks like for them and what considerations you guys have specifically focusing on email, if it's possible to look at email in isolation, and how that would compare to a smaller business, especially a smaller e-commerce business.
Yeah, so we are very focused on enterprise level clients. We do have a few not-for-profits that we work with, so that's also, you get that very smaller kind of window of things. But yeah, the enterprise clients, I've been with this agency and my previous agency that I was with, we were specifically focused on enterprise level things. So I would love to talk about it and what the challenges are, how they do things. Now, when just so I answer your question correctly, when you say strategy, like what are you referring to specifically, or do you want me to just cover the whole spectrum?
I totally understand it. It's quite broad. I think, I'll tell you what I'm used to marketing for my clients, and then you can kind of match that up to what you guys do, and then, contrast. Typically, like we would look at a strategy in an isolation of a month for a campaign strategy. And more often than not, seeing as though there's a lot of moving pieces and things are quite fast paced, we're looking at an email marketing strategy in isolation of other social media promotions of on page like website offers and stuff like that. I'd love to know, like, obviously I'm assuming in your guys' space you have the resource to take over a much more holistic approach of marketing in general. First of all, is that the case, and how are you typically pairing those things up?
Okay, thanks for that information. So in the enterprise level, right, what of email marketing, right, we're doing millions a month, right? So you're in like the 50+ million emails sent a month. There are clients that'll do 100 million plus. There's clients that'll do 10 million plus, right? It's kind of covers all those spectrums. When we sort of get to that point, that the email program is like a living, breathing thing. It is not a static, we send a campaign every Wednesday to these people, da da da. No, it's so much more than that, right? So there's transactional components. There is your big batch and blast, kind of reach everyone sort of thing. But there are so many moving parts, and usually groups within groups that control things. So, for example, we work with a financial institution, a major financial institution, and they have about 8 different teams that have 8 separate email programs that are all running simultaneously. So we are concerned with things like crossover, right? Can someone get more than 1 email in a day? Because if so, there's a problem there. How do we prioritize which email a customer needs to see? When you're talking about data this large, we are often moving data between systems very aggressively, quickly. And then there are the cases where we are either proactively reaching out to customers or reactively reaching out to customers. That's really, I think, a lot of my work in the last 2 years has been this whole idea of taking an email program and being reactive and proactive. So reactive to something the customer did, a product they purchased, a site they visited, a profile they completed or something like that. or proactively, they're starting to match models of customers that are about to buy or about to convert or whatever it may be. So for those proactive cases, we need to identify those signals and then, hit them with that right offer, right time kind of thing. And the bar for where I feel email is, and I find that this is even the case for small to medium-sized businesses, is personalization. Those personalization components need to be there. People want to feel that there is some sort of conversation, individual conversation happening between them and the brand. That works well. So when you're dealing with millions of records, like I said, in a month, if you're going to do 70 million, that's not unheard of. You're going to send 70 million emails that have to be personalized and dynamic in a sense. The biggest concern is data quality, right? Like, is all your data does it all match? Are you missing first names? Are you using fields that don't have the data structured the way you want? So where's that data going to come from? Who's going to get it there in time? When do we need to have it by? How are we going to test to make sure what we have is working? There's a lot of moving parts that way. And really, it just comes down to just taking one strand at a time and just following it all the way through. So I can keep going on that, but I'd love to know like which way you want me to.
Sure. So it sounds like when you get to these larger levels, you're less of an email marketer and more of like a number cruncher. You're a data analyst. You're would that be about right?
I would say so, yeah, because I mean, you'll see something like, we got a 20% open rate on this campaign, but the one last month had a 21% open rate. That's the difference of like 50,000 people. It's massive, right? The other thing that's interesting, and going back to deliverability for a second, is a lot, not in most cases, when you're kind of at that enterprise level, I think a lot of the enterprise ESPs like Adobe, Salesforce, Braze, all these guys that do heavy volume have really gotten their deliverability set up in a good spot. So most of these large clients have strong deliverability, good inboxing, good delivery, low bounce rates. So, we need to then know, how do we maximize what they potentially have, right? How do we maximize the audience, the performance of the campaign? So we're layering all that stuff into the strategies that we're designing and the how we're sending. Right? So there's those components as well. And I think that the most interesting way to sort of look at it, it comes down to that conversation that I was talking about with customers, right? When you're engaged in this conversation with them, what life cycles do you have your customers in? And I always say that you should always, like a customer should never be sitting still. They should always be in a life cycle of some sort, a product life cycle, a journey of some sort, something, so that they're constantly engaging with your program and, seeing you in their inbox, for example.
So how are you matching up or ensuring that there's no double ups, no crossovers and everything like that? Because I mean, for a business that is sending 70 million emails a month, I imagine there's hundreds of journeys that can be set up across a wide range of things. How are you ensuring that people are not merging into one, merging into the next? How are you triaging things? How do you even start with that?
The answer is, it starts with one at a time, right? Just one campaign at a time. Really, it does. Now, I find that visualizing these things helps a lot. So let's take a journey, let's plot it all out, right? It might be a 60-day journey, 180-day journey, whatever it may be. The next one, let's plot it out and just kind of see where people fall. Now, within that, there are, like I said, these different initiatives. So there might be a core email campaign, say it's that monthly newsletter or that weekly newsletter, goes to everyone. We know we have that. Okay, so let's put those on the calendar. Now we have our visual calendar. Let's plot the different days where we can put in other communications to fill it in. This is an important exercise, because if you don't do that and you start abusing your recipients, you're going to have that spike in unsubscribe rates, a spike in spam complaint rates. It's just not going to work with it's not going to inbox very well or resonate well with the customer. So really, you start with one at a time. And going to what I was saying before of like, yeah, there will be times when, here's Thursday, and this person should technically receive 4 emails today that they are all relevant to that customer, because they're in these various journeys, product journeys, whatever it may be. We had to develop a prioritization system, right? So without solutioning and like on the spot here, just citing from examples that we have going on right now live, that would all be done within a data management platform. Right? If you have like a CMS or a CDP, right? You have all of that data there, and you're crunching this data. You're pulling the data. Who's supposed to get what today? We can see where there are duplicates. We have to apply a prioritization, and that prioritization might be this email will be more lucrative for the company, or this email will be more relevant to the customer, or this email is really important because they're in overdraft, or they have some important information on their account they need to go look at, for example. So those have to take precedence, and it comes down to planning that. And then the last thing I'll add to that is, it's not, I know we're talking about email here, but we have to also liaison with the social people, right? And what are the social campaigns doing? How are those two communicating? Because again, in that enterprise level, the expectation is that it's all connected, all flowing together. It never is, right? You look under the hood of any big company, no matter how like squeaky clean they look, it's usually a mess down there. That sort of requires a lot of people to bring it all together and sort of make it work.
So, yeah, I totally hear you on the social front. I mean, I feel like with bigger businesses, there's just bigger problems. Is really what ends up happening. What type of softwares are you guys using for this stuff? Is it custom built softwares? Is it, because typically, I play around a lot in the world of Klaviyo, right? So Shopify stores typically doing under about 15 million a year. Klaviyo works perfectly for them, right? Syncs in beautifully. What are you guys using for these larger clients?
So we will continue and always do position ourselves as completely agnostic of software. Whatever you're using, that's fine. It's the theory behind how you use it, how that makes the difference, right? So you can, it doesn't matter the size, right? As long as it has the tools to do what you need to do, it's good software. But to answer your question, we use a lot of Salesforce. There's lots of Salesforce Marketing Cloud in that space. A lot of Adobe Campaign, and all the different versions of that. Braze, we're seeing a lot of Braze come up, and Braze has a lot of great capabilities, a lot of power there with a great UI. We see a lot of that, and then a lot of Acoustic. So they have an incredibly powerful tool that we also have a lot of clients using it. And really, the reason that enterprise level clients are gravitating towards these tools because of the horsepower they have to be able to do these things. Often these systems need to be manipulating data in some way. Like for example, if I'm going to send an email that's got content blocks in it, you're going to get a different version of it than I am. When your record comes up time for deployment, it's like, oh, okay, we need to add these two components. Here's Bob's. These components go this way. It has to happen like that. Salesforce Marketing Cloud has a great system for managing data within, plus you can run SQL queries right within Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So, you have data processes and batch processes and cron jobs that are running kind of there. The tool really does need to match up with your company's goals, your company's capabilities, and your company's ecosystem. As long as it fits into that, then the tool can do those things. But you need that horsepower and that sort of capability to have to be able to deliver this at scale.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk a little bit more about testing. You mentioned that slightly at the top. For smaller businesses, when it comes to testing, you're doing really radical tests, right? You're testing things such as a whole new template design, just because you're working with smaller data sets, and to really get significant inferences from that data set, you need big, bold changes. Are you guys doing that, or are you guys focusing more on that little pixel to the left adjustment of the logo here? What kind of tests are you guys trying to tackle at that higher level?
So I always say, always be testing. Like if you're going to send an email, have at least 2 subject lines, right? Have at least 2 variation, if you can, right? And that's hard work because another part of testing is QA, right? You got to make sure that the versions, everything looks good, that, there's that whole layer to it. But I'm always encouraging testing. And what we do we test journeys, so entire journeys, right? Like, this journey seems to be just too aggressive. Let's back it off a little bit. So we'll have another journey running simultaneously. That is that every 6 days you get an email versus every 4 days, right? These little tests like that. Because going back to what I was saying about deliverability, like a lot of these companies do perform well, like their emails do perform well, but are they performing as well as they can? Is that question. So that's when it comes, those little differences make a difference, right? Like, I think the best example is, one thing that we talk a lot about is the attention span of consumers, because most people are on their phones, right? And in most cases, we see that the mobile open rates are higher than desktop open rates, and we see that kind of continuing. So we want to serve emails that are easily digestible on a mobile phone and are thought and are designed like in a mobile first way. To make a shift like that, you can't just say, okay, boom, we are now doing mobile first designs only. No, you test a mobile first or a mobile optimized approach in conjunction with your regular approach, and you slowly sort of migrate to whatever you feel is best. So it's everything is very methodical, and I believe that, like I said, when you're always sort of testing, we always want to be testing things like content, right? How's the content laid out? Testing sending times, testing subject lines, testing audience types, throttling rates, like all of that can make a difference in how well, again, that difference between the 20% and the 21% open rate, right? That could be 50 or 60,000 people. So we want that 50,000 people to get that open, and we will do what it takes to get that. And that could be these little things that do make a big difference.
One of the things that I struggle with some of our clients when we are doing these tests, it's actually keeping a record and a track of the tests that we've done in the past. How are you keeping track of like those legacy tests that you have done? For example, like, okay, well, we'll do a 4 and a 6 day delay here, and then a year later you come and revisit it. I'm sure there's a way to analyze the records. Are you guys tracking every test that's done and then reflecting back on it? How are you monitoring that?
So in the case of enterprise level marketers, you're going to have pretty large analytics teams that we can sort of, we'll work with them. Or, we do a lot of analytics work ourselves. So we have our own analytics team that are sort of, with lack of a better word, programmed to sort of think about these things, right? So it all starts with like a campaign brief. We have the brief. This is what we wanted to accomplish. This is the data it's going to go to. This is the strategy, all that stuff. We'll have our analytics team and our QA team present at those meetings because we want them to understand what the campaign's going to be doing, so they understand how we want them to monitor it, right? If we're going to look at open rates for something, that's perfect, but we need to often go beyond that. We need to look at purchases and website visits or whatever it is, and then match that up to, the version of the template that Gavin received seemed to perform better than the version that Bob received. So I need not just a record of that campaign, I need a record of how well did those people that received that version do versus the people that received version B or version C do. I need to see all that, and I need all that for posterity all the time. Mm-hmm. So it comes down to unique identifiers. You need to have an identifier that identifies the campaign, identifies the permutation of the content, of the journey, whatever it may be. And yeah, it's documentation, right? We know that version A is this one, version B is this, version C, and all that has to be there. So it comes down, there's times when you don't want too many cooks in the kitchen. You want someone to sort of take control and say, we had this campaign go out a couple of weeks ago. Here are the results. This was the purpose of the campaign. This is how we analyzed it. This is why. Here are the results. This is what we recommend. So it really comes down to that. But
what is like a typical, timeline for a project of this size look like? Because I'm imagining in my head, I try and have a month's worth of content all planned out the month before. But I imagine, you guys are in like a constant state of deliver. Yeah, what kind of lead times are we looking like?
We're talking on average between 4 to 8 weeks, right? And often you need that, right? Especially if you're developing a template that has 100 different versions of it, which is really not unheard of. And especially, in the financial realm, you'll have a financial institution that say has several different types of credit cards. So, because you have the points credit card, but I have the low interest rate credit card, our privacy statements are going to be different. The links that we have, are going to be a little bit different. So all that has to be developed, tested, QA'd, visualized, tested in dark mode, tested on mobile, all that kind of stuff. So we need every day of those 4 weeks, of those 6 weeks, those 8 weeks. And we're always working to kind of bring that down. And then the magic happens, which is when the client comes to you and just says, hey, we need to get this email out in 5 days. What are you going to do? Right? And then you're sort of scrapping like, okay, we need to pull all these things together. Let's use repeatable templates. Let's use stuff that we know that works to kind of make this stuff happen. But, if it's not unheard of at that level to be like in the 4+ weeks time of preparedness for a single campaign. So, we're right now thinking about campaigns that are going to be going out in December. We're starting to be briefed on campaigns that are going to be going out in January 2024 because, we need to start planning that. We need to start setting time against that, and our project managers need to start like planning out like, okay, Bob's going to be available November 14th to the 18th. He can work on this one, right? Like you need that.
Yeah. It's a whole different beast, I mean, I think about it in regards to like my own agency, it's just myself and 5 others at this point. And there's a part of me that loves like the ability to be agile and nimble. I mean, I totally hear you on that. We need a campaign in 4 days. Even with that, I hate it. I hate it. And it always ends up being a bad campaign, never performs. And then, you're you're raked over the coals for a low performing campaign. It's the most frustrating thing ever. But yeah, it just seems like a behemoth of a task, especially when you're managing multiple clients. I kind of want to pivot a little bit from, the discussions around email marketing per se, because we have a mixture of listeners. We have people who are e-commerce businesses, and then we have a mixture of people who are running their own email marketing agencies as well. I'd love to dive a little bit more into the logistics of running like an email marketing agency per se. And I understand like your role is not necessarily pertaining to all of that stuff, but I'd like to hear about like how you came into the agency that you currently work with, or how it started, and how you've kind of seen that business change and evolve and turn into, I guess, going from where it was to being able to work with these larger, bigger clients. What was the process there, if you can speak to that?
So the previous agency that I worked at, that's where, so I worked there with actually colleagues that I work with now, including my boss, and the opportunity sort of arose to like do things a bit differently. We wanted to sort of create an agency that worked a little bit differently than typical agencies do in terms of how we bill, how we budget, and how we sort of work with teams. And our agency is like I said, it went kind of beyond just execution or operations, and now it got moved into like strategy and the quality assurance. So we had these other services that we wanted to offer, and this opportunity came up for us to spin that out, and we were able to grow that. So how we sort of came into that, well, for me personally, it all started with deliverability, right? I started doing deliverability work, realizing that like, okay, there's more to this than just hitting the inbox, like how it all sort of gets there. And I just took a big interest in that. And I started just nerding out on that. Like, I want to know how every component is going to fit together. And I started exploring those things. And that put me in a position where I can go to a creative designer or a program strategist and say, hey, you're a great designer or strategist, you know what you're doing, but let me tell you about best practice, or let me tell you about how these things work, or let me tell you what we're seeing, or let me tell you how this system works. Let me tell you how Braze does this, or how take any ESP, any platform, and say, let me show you how this works. This is here to do this because it allows you to do X. And I kind of got excited about the idea of like enabling strategists and people who kind of do the thinking, saying like, there's a better way, or there's a different way, or there's a best practice way of doing these things that we know perform. So let's put that in the soup, and stir it when we're kind of creating campaigns, that sort of thing.
I want to go to that grow. You said grow. It helped you guys grow as a business. What does that look like when it's dealing with like these bigger clients? I'm assuming it's almost all entirely referral based. Is that right?
Definitely. I mean, once you sort of like establish a sort of base, then word of mouth truly is our like best biz dev person, right? It's just that word of mouth. Like, hey, I know someone who's great at this stuff, right? There is always that. But the other thing is it comes to your like online presence and how you do things, how you speak. We do a lot to try to be involved in the industry. So, I'm part of, a lot of different communities online. We attend a lot of conferences. We do all those things to make sure that we're sort of present and seen. Not be afraid to say something that rocks boats, right? And the kind of, that sort of thing, because there's, especially with email is interesting when you get to in any level, right? Because there's going to be a balance. The whole point of marketing is to make money, right? To make money for the company, raise visibility for the company, whatever it may be, right? Service the customers, yes, but to keep them in your ecosystem so that they buy more, make more money. So it's all that. So you're always balancing this idea of like, send it to everybody as fast as you can. Let's go and, see the money's coming in, to, balance that with like, no, we want to be more methodical. We want to do things that are going to connect better with customers. And we want to sort of advance technology for them. One area where a lot of our work does come from, or a lot of the work that I'm sort of involved in comes from, it's these, it's marketers asking themselves, am I using my tools to the best of their capability? Is there a better way I can be doing this? Or it's been 3 years with this tech stack, I think I need to refresh a few things. So we'll kind of get in there and offer a fresh perspective. Like, hey, you can do things this way. This will allow you to do things with fewer people or fewer resources or faster, whatever it may be. And then sort of take it from there.
It's funny you mentioned that. Yeah, sorry, carry on. I didn't mean to cut you off.
The last thing I'll say is one thing that I realized from being in agency space as long as I have, is that our clients' expectation of us is to be like the cool kids on the street. It's just like, whoa, like to get excited about these things and be like, because you'll have like a email program, and you don't want it to stagnate. You don't want to stagnate in your role. You want that agency to be bringing those cool ideas, and like that agencies, I think it's an agency's job to constantly be saying like, okay, this is what we should do next, or have you thought about this? And even if those ideas don't go anywhere, if the company says, thank you, but like maybe we won't try this one out, no problem. Next month I'm going to have some new stuff for you. And that part I think is important for agencies, no matter what kind of agency. If you're a creative agency, a data agency, an operational agency that sends email, whatever it is you do, you should always be there with ideas and be positive and happy and sort of like, like, hey, did you hear this industry news? Like Gmail and Yahoo are making changes to their reputation monitoring system. Like, hey, here's what we should do, right? Like, I'm the one that's bringing that to our clients because that is what they expect of me. Sorry.
I think it's such a good point. Two things. The first one is, it's funny you mentioned that it comes from like a lot of the work comes from that initial audit. Like, I think I can be doing better, but I need a third party opinion. That is where about 50% of my work comes from, where it's just people saying, hey, can you just take a look at my account? Hey, can you take a look at what I'm doing wrong? And it actually, sometimes it's also me proactively auditing people who I want to work with, right? And just reaching out saying, hey, I noticed XYZ, you can do this a bit better. Hope that helps. And going from there. I think as well, I learned the hard way of not being proactive when it comes to just bringing new solutions. I think in the agency space, it's so easy to get complacent and just sit in that. We're going to deliver our 4 campaigns, our 5, 6 campaigns a month. You need to be proactively delivering value, right? And that can come in so many different ways, right? But just finding ways to just show that you're engaged, you're present, and that things are consistently changing. For any email marketing agency, personally, the thing that I found is the easiest is, we all have different scopes of work, but if you're on a light scope of work, the easiest way to consistently deliver value is just running split tests on automations in the background, right? Totally easy, and it's like a super easy talking point as well. Just saying, hey, look, we ran this split test here with this subject line, we increased your open rates by 8%. Awesome. And then just having those little things where you're showing that you're proactively in the account.
Oh, and the opposite of that, like, hey, we tried this out, wasn't as, didn't showcase a lift, didn't really do what we wanted. So that's a learning too, right? Like negative analytics, we sometimes call it, right? Like, those things, like let's look at what's not working. And I have to give my credit to this to my boss. He said this one thing that's always stuck with me, where he's like, I hate being comfortable, he said, because when you're kind of comfortable, you're not working on it. So he wants to be uncomfortable. And in that situation, that new client feeling, they're like, okay, we need to like make a mark, we need to impress them, like all this kind of stuff, and just month to month having that feeling. Yeah. And that, can be exhausting in a way, but it's also in a different way stimulating and exciting, and you get their excitement going, right? Sort of thing. Right? And that's like a palpable thing. So
that's a great line. I hate being comfortable. I mean, I think I've manifested that in pretty much every single one of my relationships. So maybe not there, but yeah, I think when it comes to email, 100%. But don't bring that into the family life. Yeah. That's a great point, man. I think it's, I don't know about you. When I first got into this, there was like this idea where it's like, I'm going to reach the place and things are going to get easy. It's just, it's always on, it's always like over delivering, always being proactive, always attacking, finding ways to, just find those strategies where you can just pump this, get that. It's just consistent. It's never like, I think like, well, listen, I love, sorry to get meta here. I love Tim Ferriss, but the idea of the 4-hour work week is just, I think everyone's like, we'll do that. It's just not a reality.
Yeah, I get what he's tapping into there. I like his stuff too. And I think that like there's a way to sort of approach that in sort of this space, but it really comes down to like, it's not easy, right? Like in this way, and regardless, like part of your workday needs to be research and it needs to be just like reading what's going on LinkedIn or connecting with people and hearing new ideas, right? Because I'm a big believer in like hive mind sort of thing, right? Like you put in a bunch of people in the room, everyone's contributing, you get a better product than one person could come up with or whatever it may be. So I like that. I like showing stuff to people. I love showing the intricacies of email delivery to people who like do not touch the stuff, right? It's like the person who's responsible for like the points part of the program. And I was like, hey, let me just show you how this works. And they get all excited and they're like, oh, we can do this and this. And then sort of like layers on these different ways of looking at or different ways we want to test things. And then I understand their job better, right? What they're trying to achieve. And I'm like, okay, I can deliver better results for you because I get what you're going at. So those perspectives feel fresh. And then the most important thing is to take a break, right? Just walk away, right? Just take breaks, like take a day off, whatever you need to do, clear your head, have a hobby, right? Those things that help you, good for your soul. And you come back and like I find the brain works better, and you're able to sort of see the relevance of these little things and these little tests of subject line testing, all that, and why that's really cool and what you're actually doing, which is creating perfection or aiming at perfection of like, this is the best this can possibly do. We checked all the boxes, and that is cool.
All those things you mentioned, just about collaborating with other moving parts in the business and especially your client's business, and finding ways to really ingrain yourself in it helps so much with retention as well, right? With clients, where you get to a point with your business where you just become indispensable to the people you're working with. And I want to be really clear, like when it comes to working your way into a business, you don't want to be arbitrarily indispensable. You don't want to create systems and processes that don't actually serve any purpose, but just make it difficult for you to leave. But you get to a point where it's like, the business doesn't even see you as a third-party service provider. You're just part of the team. And that's that constant, collaborating, like you said before, 20 minutes ago, collaborating with social, right? Like developing relationships with different parties within the business is so, so huge. And trying to have touch points and be, not a service provider, but a straight up partner in a part of that business. It's just going to help so much with retention. And then you stack that on to consistently delivering value. There is no reason that the client would ever leave, right? And that's just going to help with your business in the long run. And yeah.
And like the scary part, right, is just like, oh, if you stagnate, or you do things get easy, right, sort of thing. The client will be like, okay, well, I think it's time we bring in some new, fresh ideas, right? No, you want to be that person. So, if you to say, I want to be that company that brings you, that agency that brings you the fresh ideas. Cool statement for your company. But now you personally, like you individually, what are you doing to bring those fresh ideas? Like, what do you do personally, right? Like I've said, like the working groups, I do a lot of networking. I speak a lot at conferences. I do whatever blog, whatever it can be. And I read, my peers' blogs and people in the industry who I respect. And, I look at the stuff they're outputting, because that's how I keep myself on top of what's going on and fresh and this and that in my own research, right? And listening to podcasts, all this stuff is all important. When it comes to like personally how I'm ensuring that I continue leveling up my skill set and knowledge, and like, what do I want to test today or accomplish? And then bringing that into the company, that then brings that into clients, right? So it does, and especially with an agency, and you mentioned like you're a smaller agency of just a handful of people. That is awesome. That small scrappiness, like that is so powerful and palpable. It's like a get things done sort of thing. So even more so, like individually, I'd be interested in like the dynamic that everyone would have individually. What are they bringing to the table? What's that special flair that they have, right? Because all that becomes relative when it comes through in the work. Even if you're talking about sending 50 million emails for the corporate sector, right?
There's pros and cons. There's pros and cons to every aspect of every agency, right? I think a lot of the times when you're first starting out, I did as well. With my agency, I would say things like we do this, and that was me leaning away from I'm small, and it's actually I will do this, and just switching that tonality and the words that you use. Lean into the fact that you're a small business, you're able to be agile, you're able to give really dedicated attention. Whereas, if you're a bigger business, lean into that as well. We have tried and true systems and processes that we've worked for other people. These work, we're consistent, we have a whole team behind us. There's pros and cons to every single thing, and it's lean into them. Don't shy away and try and be something you're not, which is what I tried doing.
And I truly mean this, like no matter what size your company is, right? Like, and I'm talking about marketers, I'm talking about client side, right? Like no matter what size your company is, if you feel like you need to bring an agency on board to help you with X, you don't need to aim at the agency that employs thousands of people and have offices all over the globe. No, like I want like the scrappy, smaller, cutting edge guys or team that can bring that sort of energy to it, right? Like that is just can be so just as effective or effective in a different way than like the major big agency that has the structured processes and the systems and all this kind of stuff, which has its own type of power that it can bring to whatever it is you're doing, right?
I find increasingly with clients, hitting that $5 to $10 million mark, more of them want a very small and niche down agency. They say, I just want to, and this is where I've positioned myself with our business. My business is, we just do email. We don't do Facebook. We don't do Google. We don't do Meta. We don't do SEO. Just email marketing. And just off the back of that, that's like, okay, cool. I like that. That's what I want to hear. I want to find a really dedicated service provider. And yeah, they love that stuff.
That would excite me. Like as like client side, I'd be like, you just do that. Like that's your specialty. I'd love to see, what is that you're bringing, because the words that you use, and I've done this myself. When you said we're a small agency, right? Like it's not the same as saying we're a small business or we're a startup, right? Like it's not the same thing. A small agency means there's only a few people, but that means there's like more that they can dedicate to what you're doing, right? So yeah, you're small inside, but not small in the importance of work that you're doing.
Totally. Yeah. And just the word agency, like, I think pushes all that other stuff away. That thought of like, you're not capable, you're not, you don't have funding, anything like that. But Bob, we have to wrap this up. My friend, any last comments? Where can people find you besides obviously the description in the video down below, which you can find all of Bob's links? Shout out, where can they find you? Where can we learn more about you? Where can we get in touch?
I mean, best place is on LinkedIn. Honestly, I put so much stuff out through there. That's a big starting point. That's that. And then if you do attend industry conferences, you'll likely see me. I try to be as visible as I can at those. If I'm not speaking, I'm at the booth or whatever it may be. So I'm out there, and I'd love to meet new people and like solve new problems and get excited about things. I'm all about that palpable. Like this is interesting. Let's have some fun.
Absolutely. Well, Bob, thank you so much for coming on. And guys, if you want to get in touch, just refer to the links down below.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for the time.
Cool, mate. Thank you.